Welcome back to Strangers and Aliens, a podcast and a video feed about the intersection of science fiction and spirituality, of fantasy and faith, of creativity and Christianity. And today we're going to talk about a graphic novel that it does it all. All those things I just mentioned, all six of them, they're all in here. It's one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. It's Creature Tech by Doug TenNapel. Hey, I'm Ben Avery. I am a comic book writer. I am a comic book fan. I am a Christian. And that's why this graphic novel I'm about to talk about is something I'm very, very excited to talk about. Creature Tech by Doug TenNapel. TenNapel. I'm not sure exactly how to say his name. I've never met him. I would really love to talk with him. He does a lot of stuff that is just super imaginative. The artwork and the art style that he works with it's just astounding to me. It just grabs my imagination. It just grabs my eye. And it's something that when I worked with Tim Barron, I was so excited to work with Tim Barron because there's a very, very Doug TenNapel-ish style to Tim Barron. And so the graphic novels I was able to do with him, I feel like this is the closest I'm ever going to get to being Doug TenNapel. Now, Doug TenNapel, he's one of those guys, though, who has it all. He's able to write, he's able to draw, and he's able to produce something that is just plain amazing. And this graphic novel right here has been at the top of my list of Christian created graphic novels of all time. And when I say top of my list, I do mean that. I mean, this is the #1 Christian created graphic novel that I have ever read in my entire life. And quite possibly, considering how old I am right now, maybe I'll never read another one that's as great as this one. And there's reasons that we'll get into, but I did a list of my top 10 or 15 graphic novels of all time that were by Christian creators. I did this for a blog 15 years ago, maybe. I don't know. It was a long, long time ago, but it was the same kind of thing that I'm doing here where I'm asking, is it worth reading? I did this blog post to say these are 10 or 15. I can't remember. It was on Blogspot. If you remember Blogspot, I think it's still out there. I know my blog still exists. Every couple of years I've gone to see, is my blog still there? And it is. So Blogspot still exists. I'm just not sure if people use it or anymore, but I did it for that, to do the same kind of thing, to say, hey, there is good stuff out there, because the same kind of things are being said about all Christian creative arts. People are saying that Christian comics aren't worth looking at, aren't worth reading. People are saying that Christian books aren't worth reading, aren't worth taking time to or spending money on. People are saying Christian movies are not worth talking about. Or if they are worth talking about, it's because they're so bad. They're all so bad. And they paint these really broad strokes. The unfortunate thing about broad strokes is it covers up the fine strokes of the things that are out there that are high quality. And so when you paint with those broad strokes, the truth is, and this is my theory, and I've brought this up before, I don't know when, and so it's quite possible you never heard me say this before, but I believe that the truth is that the same percentage of awful art that you find in Christian circles is the same percentage that you find just in general. I think the difference is in Christian circles, those circles are smaller. And so the pool is smaller and it's easier to see. And it feels like there are fewer things that are good. And that's because there are fewer things that are good, because the circle is smaller than that broad secular circle. And so I think that the law of averages or whatever, I don't know, but I think that that's how it works in my opinion, is that no matter where you look, no matter where you go, there is good, there is bad, and there are people who are trying to move from bad to good. And I do think that Christian artists get more discouraged than artists who are not working in Christian circles, because the people who should be supporting them are painting those broad strokes and saying it's no good. It's no good. So anyway, I did that blog post, getting off of my soapbox now and returning back to this review of this graphic novel. This was the #1. This was the #1, and it still is the #1 graphic novel by a Christian creator. Now, I don't know where I would place this on the spectrum of just graphic novels in general. It's in my top 5. I know I know it would go in my top 5 I'm just not sure if it'll be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Some of it would depend on the mood that I'm in. But it's up there. Honestly, for me, it's up there with Ronin, which by Frank Miller, which is one of my top five. With Mouse by Art Spiegelman, one of my top five. With Swamp Thing. I'm not going to go on all of them, but anyway, this is up there. This is definitely up there in that top five. I haven't had the time, and I really don't like ranking things in order because it's hard. It's hard to do. Anyway, this is up there in the top five, but as far as like books that were created by Christians, that's this right here. Now, there's a number of reasons for it. One is just the artistic imagination that goes into this, and I said that this encompasses all the stuff. It encompasses the spirituality, the creativity, the faith, and then it also encompasses the fantasy, the science fiction, and the creativity, and the way that it's a science fiction book. Basically, it's about this guy who encounters this thing that becomes a symbiotic relationship with him, and then he goes on strange and wild adventures that have to do with the Shroud of Turin and aliens, and a scene that is just one of the most affecting scenes that I have honestly seen in a comic book. I just love it so much. There's actually a number of what I would call haunting moments, and I shouldn't say I would call them that. My professors at a writing program that I went to call it the haunting moment, that every screenplay needs to have a haunting moment, and I would expand that out then to every book, maybe every comic book needs to have a haunting moment, which is something that sticks with you out of context. It's something that sticks with you because it was just a really nice moment, or a really emotional moment, or a really raw moment, or a really exciting moment. And there's a number of them here. There's one moment in here where it's just this guy, an alien, and a friend, and they're fishing. And it's a really nice moment, okay? And so this is just it's to me, there's a lot of things that just work for me. It's full of imagination. It has gruesome creatures, which I love. It has potty humor, which I won't say I love potty humor, but I do appreciate some good potty humor, and I'll laugh at some good potty humor. And it's also super artistic. I mean, his control of a pen and the ink is just, it just creates this tone, and it's a gritty tone, but it's a homemade tone, and it just, there's just something to it that just feels, he's just spilling the ink onto the page, but he's spilling it onto the page in a chaotic order. And that's, I think chaotic order, it would be my description of his art style. There is also, I mean, it's irreverent. It is. I mentioned the Shroud of Turin. Okay. And there's some stuff with that where I'm like, okay, but it's also spiritually relevant. And there's just a lot to this book. There's action, there's adventure, there's aliens. It's a spiritual sci-fi story, and it just touches me. It just reaches in and says, "Hey Ben, this was made for you, and it wasn't made for me." But at the same time, it was actually made for me. Like it just checks off all the boxes, all the boxes. It does have, and I don't want to give too much away, but I still need to talk about it. I don't want to give too much away about the plot, but there is a moment that I really want to talk about that is just, it's the most interesting and impactful alien version of the Christ sacrifice. And I would say metaphorical alien version of the Christ sacrifice, but it's not meant to be metaphorical. It's of a kind with Aslan and the White Witch, in the sense that it is Christ appearing to another world in the way that they need to see him in order to relate. And so you have Aslan as the lion in a world of talking animals. And here you have this moment where, again, I don't want to say too much, but it just reminds me of that Aslan moment, because it's not meant to be just a metaphorical. This is not just a Christ character. It's not the trope of the sacrificial hero. It is actually someone realizing what he's seeing is what he's known from Christ. Anyway, the point is, it's an effective scene, and it's an affecting scene as well. It's effective and affecting, and it has stuck with me over all of these years. And I will go a few years between looking at this, but that moment has stuck with me. And it's weird, and it's the kind of thing that I know that there will be some people who would look at it and read it and just be like, I don't think that that's appropriate. and they might be right. I don't know, but it was affecting. It was. And so, highly, highly recommended. It's just such a fully imaginative book. And there's, like I said, it just checks all the boxes. Aliens, check. Action, check. Meaningful spirituality, check. Faithful Christianity, check. It's all there. It's all there, and I enjoyed this book. Now, I have this edition. I don't know if it's the first edition or not. It might be the first edition. Doesn't matter if it is or not, but this edition is from 2002, okay? I mean, this is a 20-year-old book. However, there is a newer edition that's available on Amazon that has some extra materials in it. I think it has some sketches and things like that. But I'm always just so jealous of creators who can write and draw so powerfully, because they come with an advantage, which is what's on their mind can go on the page much, much easier than, well, someone like me who writes a comic book script and hands it off to an artist. And so then I'm trying to put the thing into the mind of the artist, and then the artist is able to take what's in their mind from what I put on the page to put it on the page. And you have, although with that, I will say, especially when I was working with Sherwin Schwartzrock and Mike Miller, both those guys, and Sergio Cariello, and yeah, and Tim Barron, actually, too, when I would script something for him. A lot of times I would have it in my head, and I'd imagine it in my head, and they would draw it better than I imagined. And so, maybe there's some moments where he was able to, like, in his long library of books that he's done, he said, oh, I had this image in my head, and then when I drew it, it actually came out better than what I had in my head. But I don't know. But I am always jealous because, when you have that 1-2 punch, you're able to eliminate a middleman. So anyway, Creature Tech, Doug TenNapel. Is it worth reading? Yes. 1,000, a million times. Yes. I mean, not that you're going to be able to read it a million times, because there's not enough time probably in life to be able to do that. But I really enjoyed this. I really endorse this, and I recommend it. So yeah. So thank you for spending time with me. I do want to remind you to please head to strangersandaliens.com, where you can find information about our audio feed, although you can also find our audio podcast in all the places where you find podcasts. And please hit like, hit subscribe. And until next time, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and Godspeed.